Welcome to the Safetica ONE demonstration video, where we take you on an insightful journey into the world of advanced data security and insider threat prevention. Safetica ONE is the comprehensive solution to your organization if you need to protect sensitive information, secure critical data, and maintain a robust cybersecurity posture. You'll witness the power of Safetica ONE's cutting-edge features and intuitive interface designed to safeguard your business from potential data breaches, accidental leaks, and malicious insider actions. Our goal is to empower you with the knowledge and tools to proactively address data security challenges while ensuring compliance with industry regulations and data protection laws.
So based off of what we are looking at now, so this is the main dashboard of Safetica ONE, and I have this period set up here. So this is just for the month of September. The demo data we have here is in 2021, so don't mind that. That is how we have this set at least, and you can choose from essentially any of these from the sidebar to then add into your, let's say, overview. For example, you can grab these and just kind of drag it around as you wish. To have that loaded into here. You can also create your custom layouts as well if you wish to have multiple different variants of that. Other than that, it really is very customizable depending on what you are looking to get the insight over. You can also export this info to PDF if you're needing to share it with management or something like this in a nice shareable format. That can be done in that sense. On the left-hand side over here, we have the company, let's say, tree. So we do integrate with Active Directory as well. So if you, it makes it much easier just to integrate all of the different user groups and so on and so forth for the organization. And we can see, as we have here, we have the different organizations, and we can, for example, this is the overarching company level. We can click into, for example, dev, or we could look at the specific user themselves or the specific machine. Really just depends, of course, on the overview you are looking to get. And again, dashboard, relatively simplistic, not so much to go over, but of course gets you the information you're looking for. The alerting section, I'll just touch on these two relatively briefly. This is also very customizable. I'm not going to go into great detail, but you can set up many different alerts and reports depending on the information you're looking to get out of the solution, who it should be sent to, when it should be generated, so on and so forth. Or rather, that's for the reports. For the alerts, naturally, they'll come in real time. The reporting side of things, yeah, this is where you can generate your various different reports, of course, as to what you're looking to understand. For example, to create a new report, I'll just name it something real quick and just kind of give you an overview as to the depth. So we can go into either the discovery side of things, which is purely the auditing side. So any sort of file operations going on the endpoint, we have the visibility on that, and we can choose between these different sections. The protection side is naturally in relation to anything that's triggering the DLP side of the product. So to have a look into the DLP logs, anything regarding disk in terms of the accesses or attempted access to certain areas within the machines, device control for the devices being plugged into the machines, and just any sort of file tagging which is going on in well, and yeah, naturally some other things here as well, and some custom layouts and other things like this which can be configured. Yeah, just wanted to show that off real quick. Otherwise, I'll get out of that and I will continue towards the discovery side. And as I mentioned with discovery is purely auditing. So this will be the auditing of any file operations, email operations, network traffic, and so on and so forth throughout here. So going into the file category. So for the file section for discovery and for the auditing, naturally, this is where we have, again, our overview of the what's going on in terms of the files. We have the open, copy, move, create, so on and so forth going on in the top operations. Most active users, we can actually see here that this individual is doing many more things than the rest, probably something good to look into. The file operation timeline, we can see a whole bunch of files were opened on this specific date and time, and then the applications used to interact with said files. And down in the record section here, we have then the overview of what is going on based off of the user, or rather filtered out through the user. So we can click into these specific areas and then have an understanding as to who's doing what. You can also categorize this differently if you wish. We can simply just pull this back down to here. And if we wanted to go filter by operations, we can do that. And then we can go, upload, download, blah, blah, blah. Essentially, what else is happening within the product. But I find it either operation or user is the most common usage. And of course, you can grab from any of these on the sidebar here as well to populate that into this setting. And then also filter out as you wish. Also to note, then in any of these sections up here, we can either export that view again, as I mentioned, via PDF, or we can also export all of the data via Excel, and things can get pulled out that way. Some clients do prefer to kind of comb through everything via Excel just because it's a common format. Now, the theme of how all of this looks is going to kind of continue throughout, of course, in terms of the records as well. Also, as I showed on the dashboard section, if you want to specifically look at development, you can look at that here, for example, or at that specific user, you can look into these things. So just to give you a quick idea on that. Naturally for emails as well, top senders, recipients, so on and so forth. Again, very similar information as you would receive from the file, at least the way that it is structured. Network traffic, again, same difference. Uploads, downloads, top uploads by user, network traffic in the timeline, and then down in the record section, again, depending on how you want to have things filtered, but we can see this is probably not a good thing that you would want to see in your environment. So we could open up that specific application and we see, okay, it looks like Mary Parker here has been doing some things with uTorrent, and that is probably not something we want happening on a company machine. So quick idea onto that. Printing, I don't know if there's anything of interest. For some folks it is, some folks it isn't, but naturally gives you an overview of who's printing what on the machines. This is not in relation to anything sensitive or not sensitive. It's just an overall view as to what is going on in terms of printing. Again, same theme, which will apply throughout the discovery side of things. Websites as well. Now, this would be something that would come along with, so for example, the product we are looking at right now, or rather the way this is all set up in terms of the license, is Safetica ONE Enterprise plus UEBA. So Enterprise will unlock some features such as SEM integration, multi-domain support. I also saw that you had mentioned something regarding branding, also for white labeling and things along these lines. That does come along with the Enterprise subscription. Also then with the UEBA, or User and Entity Behavioral Analysis. So that is then in relation to looking at who's doing what when it comes to either websites or the applications being used, and the monitoring of that. Some say productivity monitoring, some say other things. It really just depends on kind of your preferences for that. If you're looking to look into these type of things, we do have some clients using it, for example, to look at the some remote workers to ensure that they are using their time effectively, that they're not, I don't know, watching YouTube or just sitting around, or maybe not actually doing things when they're, billing hours and so on and so forth. So that is a optional side of the solution. If you want to have that visibility, great. If you don't, also perfectly fine, in terms of the websites or applications being used by the employees. But that's more so just for the visibility. That's not going to be restricting, for example, uploads to web, or things along these lines. So after the website section, and apologies if my voice is a little rough, been talking a lot today. So I got devices then here as well. So then we have also top users by these specific kind of devices, mass storage, monitors, keyboards, so on and so forth. Whatever's being plugged into the machine, we have an overview of that, and can have a look-see as to who's doing what. Again, we can see that down in the record section here. Yeah, so for example, I mean, if we're clicking on, for example, this guy, so John Black, then it'll give us an overview as to the devices that this individual was using in that sense, or for example, Charles, or what have you. Now, if we go back and just make sure that we're back on the overarching company side of things here. There we go. Who's plugging in monitors, so on and so forth. We can see that's purely just John Black. If so, the UEBA is primarily in relation to the website section as well as the application section. When it comes to others, not necessarily, but as we're looking right now, we're in the discovery side of things. This is purely auditing. This is not in relation to anybody interacting with sensitive information. This is just any and all, let's say, operations which are happening on the endpoint. Application side of things, who's using what applications, so on and so forth. Again, same theme that we had seen throughout. And also then there's this function setting. So as you mentioned, if you are using some other products and you're not necessarily needing the insight from our side, at least for this, you can disable these things as well if you're just not necessarily interested in looking at these, not for the resources or whatever else reason potentially that you're not really interested in that. You could just purely disable these, for example. Now, getting into the more interesting side of things. Nope. And right. So for the protection side, so as we are now here, we can manage BitLocker disks as well as BitLocker devices within Safetica ONE, rather than potentially managing it elsewhere. If you would be having 2, 3, whatever applications you may be using to deal with that, this can be dealt with within Safetica ONE. So yeah, BitLocker disk devices, again, if you want to manage that from here, fair enough, can do. So device control, now this is going to be, this kind of overlaps a bit also with this disk, this zone section, which I'll go over on in a second. But so for device control, we can set some specific areas, for example, for the approved mass storage devices within your organization, as well as Windows portable devices, FireWire, as well as Bluetooth. And again, in this specific setting, I'll get into the zones, which kind of elaborates a bit further. And then, of course, denied as well. If there's some specific drives or devices or something like this that which you do not want folks to be using, or again, could be set for block, read only, notify, test, or allow, depending on how you want to have that set. We could just purely block all of these devices, which we do not want. An alternative way of dealing with that would be, if I can have a look here. So in the advanced settings on the bottom, so we can also block some other, let's say other than NTFS file systems, for example, we can just, again, inherit, block, read only, or allow. And then the port settings in terms of the USB drive. So we can set everything to read only, so nobody can really move around that information. Or we could just purely set everything to block unless it's going to be in that allowed zone. And again, same will go for any of these other port settings we have here. And nearly all of them are going to be the same except for some of these down here, which is, just block, notify, test, and allow. So it does give you quite a bit of flexibility in terms of how you want to manage the devices in the organization, as well as the ports on the machine, if you want to have them open or not. But I just wanted to touch on that quickly. And of course, you can also disable this as well if you don't want to deal with the device control, so be it. Enable it, great. Or within dev, for example, if you want to have some specific subsets within this part of the company, you can enable it for that part and then assign accordingly. Really just depends, or even on the, let's say, on the individual user or the machine itself, you can also, for example, allow that specific user to access some specific device, what have you, and so on and so forth. So the identifier is the serial number for the device. So that is how we deal with that. And for example, if we go into the add to a mass storage device, for example, we can see then there's the unassigned items. So we can go through and there's, quite a few here, which will come up in various ways. But for example, if somebody's plugging in some new devices or something like this into the machine, that is where you could get some information then from the discovery side of the solution, which will give you the more detailed reports as to potentially, who's plugging in these weird devices. You can have the big, let's say, overview or layout as to what those devices are. So again, in the instance of some random wacky USB devices from AliExpress or something like that, then yeah, you can just then go into here, unassigned items, and that should then show up under here. But then the way to find which item is what, best way I would recommend would be Discovery, to have a look into those devices which were plugged in. So from the device control side of things, that's at least how that works. Now, disk guard, this is then where we can kind of deal with the permissions on the machine. For example, we have this specific folder for access denied on the C drive, just a block. So if I go into Explorer, yeah, pardon my virtual machine. Yeah, so I have that denied as it should be. Naturally could be set to either read only or allow. Also for network paths, we got network path set up. Again, same difference. Other drives here, yeah, I have this all set to block because I was doing some other things on this virtual machine. But as we can see, we've got any and all other ports blocked on here, kind of as a redundant method to block any other devices coming in. And then also for cloud drives, we can differentiate between the OneDrive and personal. So we can block a personal OneDrive account, but then allow the business side to be used. Also, for example, SharePoint, but again, we could set this to allow Google Drive, Dropbox, as well as BoxSync. Again, we can monitor and manage kind of the information flow between these. Let me just actually save that. Yeah, nothing else necessarily too much more to expand on in this section. It's relatively simple and straightforward. All right, so to continue, so now we're in the zone section here. So a little bit different than device control. This does have some similar information, although it is expanded upon in terms of we can have a look at also printers, for example, if we want to have some specific allowed or denied printers, either physical or network. Also, when it comes to network paths or IP addresses, web addresses, we can also add, again, to the allowed or denied side of things. We can also block specific, let's say, websites from being accessed and things along these lines, if that's also something of interest, or if there's other solutions that you're using to do that, fair enough. But can also be done within this product. And in the terms for like web addresses and stuff like this is also a great place where you would have, for example, your company domain or something like that, so that if people are trying to send information internally, it's not going to get interrupted. It's not going to disrupt the flow of business. But naturally, if there's some specific web addresses that you definitely don't want things getting sent to, then you would file that under the denied section. Yeah, and then some other quick, we have Windows portable devices, which is something from a little while ago, FireWire, as well as Bluetooth. Now we're getting to the good stuff. So we have the data categories and then the DLP policies. So when it comes to the categorization of the files, or at least how we go about that, so it's actually interesting you mentioned the end user classification side of things, because when it does come to Office files, or rather, yeah, Office files, these can be categorized by the end user. That is an option, although generally speaking, the best way to go about that, at least from our side in terms of a best practice, is to create a data category for, one sense or another, depending on, what you are looking for, or rather what you should tell the solution to look out for to make sure that that information is then not leaving the organization. The way that we tag it is either via metadata or NTFS tags. Depends on how you want to have that set up, but there are either options. Now, for example, for the data categories, so we can either deal with things via the content. So for example, keywords, you can use regex and so on and so forth to find whatever may be residing within those files. We also do have OCR that you can see down here to look in with image files and things along those lines. Existing classification potentially could tie into what you were mentioning if you do have some data dictionaries or something like this you're using, or something like that to import into the product that could be of use. And then also context. So context would be in the relation to what path is it stored in, what application is it being exported from, what website is it being downloaded from, and things along those lines. And file properties. And yeah, just to give you an idea, for example, for the context, yeah, sure, let's save that. And okay, yeah, so as I mentioned, with the application rules, so based off of what application it's coming from, if it's coming from, for example, CAD solution or something like this, anything that's being exported from that product, then we would have that labeled as such. So let's do tagging sample company for overarchingly for the whole company. And then we can either choose from this predefined list here, and then it will look within the solution, or rather within your products, to see what you have loaded for a CRM solution, for example, if it's something's coming from that. Yeah, again, just for example, or any specific file extensions as well. And yeah, web rules coming from a specific domain. Again, easy one, CRM. If it's coming from Salesforce or HubSpot or something along these lines, to classify it as such. And path rules, again, if it's located within a specific path or something along these lines, or like a network share or something like that, if it's residing within some specific folder, to say, yeah, anything that's in here should be classified as such. But again, this is more of a blanket categorization of the files, regardless if there may or may not be sensitive information. But if you are dealing with these, this type rather of the data category, yeah, it's either it is or it is not, let's say, categorized one way or the other, depending on the application it comes from, the web path it comes from, or the path on the machine that it resides, if that makes sense. Then for the sensitive content, I'll just go through that quickly. So then for the we have some predefined sensitive content here. This is a relatively small subset of the information that we do have at hand, but this is just what we do have preloaded into the solution. Naturally, we've been working with clients all over the globe in terms of how they wish to categorize their data. So of course, we can also assist if there's some more specific things you are looking to do, but that is kind of where this comes into the custom expressions and things along these lines, for regex and all that good stuff, as well as custom dictionaries for any specific keywords or things along these lines you want to be looking within the files for. Also, to have some sort of a threshold in terms of, if you want it to be, if it's anything that there's 5 or more of these within the file, then yes, label it as such. If it's 1, potentially not. Again, really just depends on how you want to deal with that. But that is how we do work with our data categories. And specifically, if we're dealing with, for example, and I'll just turn on credit card numbers, for example. So now we're looking for any documents or anything like that, which is containing any sort of credit card information. And this is using the keyword as well as regex, because it is a predefined that we have. We can turn OCR on, and then we could just hit finish. So in this sense, now the product would be looking for any files, if they're moving off of the endpoint, to then scan that file, look within it, see if there's any credit card numbers or the word, let's say credit card number or something like that. And if it finds it, it'll classify it as such. If we don't have any DLP rule in relation to it, it'll let it go. If we have a DLP rule saying block anything in relation to this category, then it will block it. Or we can also scan for the data at rest. So this happens more often than not. A lot of folks are downloading information off of SharePoint or anything else really onto their machine to work with. They could forget to delete it and so on and so forth. So there could be a good amount of information residing on that endpoint, which you may not really want there. So we can also set up a discovery task to then go, this is right now set up for the whole company to search all the machines in that company. We could set a custom path if we want to look within downloads or something, or if we want to look at all the local drives, we could do that. And then we can also set it to repeat daily, weekly, monthly, just to scan the machines to make sure that there's nothing that shouldn't be there, essentially. So yeah, we can deal with the data at rest as well as in motion. Really just depends on how you would be looking to deal with that. So we have, we'll just leave that as whatever. So we can then, for example, we have this top secret data category, which is in relation to files which reside on the C drive in a folder called top secret. And again, if we're wanting to use the content, it could be, whatever sensitive content, doesn't really matter. So that's how we have that set, at least for a policy. And then we would continue. the policy rules. So we could have purely log only, log and notify. In the notification, there would be something popping up on the end user just saying, hey, this is a sensitive file. Essentially, when somebody would share something, log and notify is then that instance. And then the log and block would be then if somebody's trying to send a file which is containing that information, then it would block it and a pop-up would come up saying, yeah, this has been blocked because of this. Contact your admin if you believe this is incorrect or what have you. We also do have a override feature. So in the instance that somebody's trying to send some information, but they believe that they're justified in doing so, they can click to continue to send it, although there will need to be some justification filled out. There's a drop-down menu of about, I think, 2 or 3 different options, and then there's some text field you need to input to then go further. And again, you can say, oh yeah, sorry, no, this is not what I wanted to do, and you click out of it. It'll still be logged, but nothing would be sent. Or you would say, yep, this is why I want to do this, and you proceed. But of course, in that event, information is still being logged. Also, shadow copy, I know you mentioned that. We do have a shadow copy feature for the instance where somebody would be trying to send information. Let's say that then the information did actually get blocked because of the policy that is set, and the person freaks out and wants to delete those files from their machine. They can delete the files all they want, although if you do have shadow copy enabled, there are local copies of those files stored actually on the endpoint in a hidden folder, which is not accessible by the user. And then you can pull these files from the endpoint into the console to review at a later point in time, if you wish. And then under the policy rules here, this is a somewhat, let's say, basic format we have. So I can also go through here, and we have a lot more. I'll just go through and select them all so you can see them easily. Also, another interesting thing that I learned recently, within the product, one can also set up specific rules for the accessibility of certain files within certain applications. I don't know if that's of interest, but I found that quite interesting because I did not know that was possible with the solution. But so, for example, if you want to have some CRM, let's say, related information only opened by a CRM application, not being opened, for example, by maybe File Explorer or something like that, you could specifically block that out or something along these lines. But in the section here, we can see this is all of the, let's say, various paths that we are covering, and most of these are just set to either block or allow. Some of them, for example, the upload, allow in safe zones, for example, your company intranet or whatever else you would put in that safe zone, as well as emailing for, again, your company domain or something like this, and again, so on and so forth throughout here. And there's some other things that we could then go into further to customize down here. And to give you a quick example, kind of on how things look if somebody's trying to exfiltrate some info, let me open up WeTransfer real quick. And that one folder, rather the path that we have designated for that top secret data category, where is it? I think it's in data. Yep, top secret. Patients, and this could be some patient data or something along the lines. That's kind of how we have this at least set to mimic. And again, forgive my VM for being a bit slow, especially when opening Adobe for whatever reason. All right, so we have this file opening up here, and also on the bottom we can see these are the actions which are not allowed, for example, for this file, which is essentially everything, meaning, movement of said file, internet, I guess uploading, I presume, emailing, copying, screenshotting, printing. So also, if I were to try and, where did it go? I just saw this open up. There we go. It's hiding behind Teams. Yeah. So if I want to take a screenshot, we can see it's blacking out the entirety of that image. And it looks like also Adobe decided to stop responding in the meantime, but we can see we're blacking out all of that sensitive information in regards to said file. And will it let me get out of it? Yes, it will. And if I were then to upload said file as well, I'll show you just what it looks like, at least from the endpoint perspective. Okay, so trying to send that via WeTransfer to grab a link. So it will sit here, think about it, something went wrong. This pop-up comes up on the bottom corner. If I want more information, I have more information, and it'll just kind of give me some brief info, and you can customize this text down here. Yeah, forgive Kevin Malone on the corner. This was just me messing around the other day, and I didn't remove it. And then also, if you were to have the user override enabled, there would be an extra, let's say, dialog box popping up in this little white section here, except much more expanded, and just giving you those options as to, okay, this was a mistake, or this is like, intended, or, what have you, and then some sort of a text field in terms of inputting information. So that's essentially how it would look from the end user point of view if they were trying to send some information or do something with sensitive information.
As we reach the end of our Safetica ONE demonstration, we hope you've gained valuable insights into the cutting-edge capabilities of this comprehensive data security solution. Safetica ONE stands as a formidable guardian, defending your organization's most valuable asset, data. From its centralized console, seamless deployment, and powerful data loss prevention, DLP, features to its advanced threat detection and insightful reporting, Safetica ONE proves itself as a reliable partner in your ongoing battle against data breaches, insider threats, and compliance challenges. If you have more questions, do not hesitate to contact us at info@safetica.com.